you guys, talking amongst my peers. I'm going to start off with a quick poll. Who likes to eat cake? Be honest. Oh, a lot of you, okay. Who likes to bake cakes? That is awesome. I hate it. I am not good at baking a cake. I feel like you have to be extremely patient, and I'm one of those people who likes to eat the ingredients as I'm picking them, and I like to taste the cake throughout the process. So by the time you want to put something in the oven, there's no cake left. So I'm going to stick to paid search marketing, but I will borrow the analogy to try to break down this complex process that we as digital marketers face with setting up tracking across a variety of digital journeys, across a multitude of sources, and then being able to stitch that data together in order to get this full funnel measurement in a way where we can slice and dice it in granular fashion that allows us to have insightful insights and take action with our media. So I'm going to start out just with the roster here. So these are the different hats that have to be worn throughout the baking process. This can look very different for everybody's organization. Some organizations outsource a lot of these. You know, you work with an agency. A lot of it can also be fully in-house. You might wear a few of these hats, one of these hats. You might share these hats with a lot of people. So really try to see how this fits within your organization. Obviously, the examples I share will be a little bit more for how we do it at Ally. So running through these roles, starting out with the visionary, this is the person who basically orders the cake. They're going to say whether they want it to be 3-tier, you know, what's important about the cake. So for us, it's data integrity. So I know a lot of people talk about this. It's like, how can I trust my data? So we're going to talk about how to make sure that you can set up your tracking properly so that you can trust it, but also how you have to continuously be curious, looking under the hood to make sure that you do trust it. Full multi-dimensional tracking, so again, across these various journeys and through these various sources, you want to have it talk to each other so that you can interlink that stitching. Then the full funnel measurement piece, so being able to tie all of your initial campaign metrics to how that is really delivering revenue for your business. I'm going to go through each of the other roles one by one. So we're going to start with the scientist here, the person who's going to come up with the recipe. So what they want to do is map out those various journeys. This one here is specific to search, but this sort of allows you to bucket those different parts of the journey into the various layers of your cake. So this is where we're going to identify what needs to be tracked within those layers, right? So we have the campaign data for search. This is going to be impressions, clicks, cost. How do we track it? Where do we track it? Our bid management platform. Then the on-site piece, visits and actions. You usually use web analytics, so Google Analytics, et cetera. And how are you setting up your tracking there? Is it based on page names? Is it event-based? And then the off-site, so your data management system. What happens when somebody becomes a customer? Have they opened up one account with $1, or have they opened up several accounts with $500,000, right? So these are those qualitative metrics that we want to be able to stitch to our initial campaign data. Then you're going to design how to capture these across those different layers. So of course, with search, we have our conversion tags, right? So you have to understand what is a conversion metric, create that tag, and implement it. It's really important when you're creating tags to understand things like counting method. So default will be to count all. If you're in retail, that makes sense, right? If you sell 2 shirts from the same person, that's double the money. But if you're in a bank and you're getting a new customer, you have to set that to unique so that you are actually measuring. Again, talking about that data integrity, you really have to question how things are working and make it work for you. So this is just a little visual. I hope those of you on this side of the room can see it. But when we're breaking down the layers of the cake, how are we linking those layers? So for us, in search, we have URL parameters, right? Somebody clicks an ad, and it can populate these dynamic customer static parameters that we then want to catch on site. That's how we stitch campaign to on-site. Then from on-site to off-site, when somebody does become a customer, there's a unique ID that gets created and stored in that cookie as well, so that you already are able to tie that back to the URL parameters. And then the beautiful piece happens with being able to tie that to everything that the customer did for your business. Choosing the ingredients, so the farmer. So first the farmer's going to pick what are the types of things that are important to us that we want to be able to segment our full funnel measurement by. So for search, these are our parameters. There's a lot of dynamic ones, few examples here, device, ad group ID, and then you have your custom parameters. So what's more important for you as a marketer, but also for you as a business. You can set up custom parameters at the ad group level that group certain products together so that you have this easy filter once you do that complex stitching together. You can even look at custom parameters at the ad level where you break out call to action. This way, you're going to be able to have this multitude of granular data that comes together where you can slice it and say all call to actions that were open, what was my impression, clicks, and cost, and what was my revenue or balance or trade or whatever some of those qualitative metrics may be for your business. Then you want to plow the business and identify what those KPIs are. So an example here would be, we want to drive deposits and we want to improve our cost efficiencies. So what's a formula there? Deposits over cost. So we get like deposits per marketing dollar. So then you want to see, can I get this formula at the granular levels that we're setting up? So here's an example where you would take that deposit data, filter it by, let's say, the device type and the call to action, and then you would divide that by the cost that's also broken out at those same segments. So that's how you get that full funnel measurement, and you really get to identify it at these granular levels. Then the farmer's going to plant the pixels and the tags. So he's the person who makes sure that, okay, I know the various KPIs and formulas that are important to our business. What are those things that I need to ensure are on the site that are triggering back to these various sources to provide that measurement, right? So really important, again, about the counting method, because when we talk about data validation across these sources, we always say, oh, well, this one's saying we drove 100 accounts and that one's saying 50. So this stuff's really important to understand how those different sources work and how to make the methodology behind those tracking pixels as similar as you can so that they'll end up being within like a tolerant delta for you. So baking the cake, this is us digital marketers. This is when we have to sort of understand the process that was set up. We have to understand the recipe, and we have to make the best cake we can out of that recipe. So just going to throw in a couple best practices here for search. Obviously, breaking out brand and non-brand is extremely important. A lot of people don't truly understand how the machine works with Google's matching algorithm, but I have to say I've seen it many, many times where people may break out brand and non-brand, and then somebody's suddenly, sharing performance on our non-brand campaigns, and you suddenly dig under the hood and you look in the search query report, and guess what? 20% of brand is actually going there. So it's really important to understand your machine and set up things that make the machine work the way you want it to. So this is where keyword fencing comes in, right? Negate your brand terms from your non-brand. Make sure that you're not producing data that could mean two things. You could also break out by match type, product, device, et cetera, all things that you think may alter the return on investment, but also sets up these campaign levers that we have to sort of play around with that recipe so that it produces the cake you want it to. So campaign level, again, we have the keyword fencing. You're going to want to negate your audiences as well, like your customers. You're not going to want them in your branded campaigns, right? Let them find you organically. But you also can break out RLSA campaigns this way. So people who have visited your site before, break them out into a different campaign, target and bid, and negate them from everything else so that you can control the messaging to them, but also ensure that the data that you're measuring for that segment has integrity. So knowing exactly how the machine works, I cannot stress this one enough. These are just a few of the examples that we have in search on what you can do. So obviously budget settings, I think the default is standard. I wouldn't see why it would not be accelerated. If there's something that's having a return for you, you want to maximize it. You want to go after 100% without any loss of rank due to budget. For ad rotation, we have obviously optimize or rotate evenly. I think, within the financial services, we can say that one account is not always the same value as another account. So we don't want the machine to optimize to new accounts, because one account that deposits $1 is very different than two accounts that deposit over 50 grand, right? So we want to control that full funnel measurement in order to identify the true creative that's driving the highest return on your ad spend. So rotating evenly also allows you to create a true A/B testing structure. So this is another important part, being able to reach your sample size and reach significance in the performance of those two ads to that full funnel KPI, and not just looking at click-through rate, conversion rate. Yes, that is a part of the equation for insights, but that should never be your primary or secondary KPI to make a decision on overall return of an ad. Then you want to design the creative for your audience, right? So if we're taking in the example of somebody searching for a brand product on mobile, so like an Ally savings account on a mobile device, obviously we have competitors coming after our brand terms. We want to instill confidence in that searcher that, hey, you look for Ally, we are Ally. Official site, brand is important. But we want to tailor the copy to saying, hey, did you know that you can open this product at Ally on your mobile phone in 5 minutes, and then you can access your money anywhere, anytime from our free mobile banking app, right? Makes sense. Non-brand offer from an RLSA. So this is somebody who's visited your site before, but maybe they went away and now they're shopping again. I am opening up a new bank account. Is there a good promotion out there? So we want to talk to them in a way where brand is a little less important, but we want to say, hey, you already know us. Why didn't you convert before? We do have a new account bonus offer. So we're delivering to the intent that you had in that search. And we're instilling confidence. You know, we're confident that you'll see why more than 500,000 customers bank with us, just to sort of help nudge them along. Anyway, once you tailor this creative, then you can set up your true A/B tests where you're testing open an account versus get an account or whatever it may be. Implement the tracking template. So again, follow the recipe. Make sure that you're not skipping any steps. You set up that tracking template at the account level, all those custom parameters at the other level. And this is what happens when somebody clicks your ad. All of those beautiful variables just pre-populate for you. And if they're set up to be caught on site, you're going to be able to slice and dice your data cake any way you want. Next step, the detective comes in. You know, he's got to sample the cake, make sure it's good enough. So the first step is being able to stitch the data across those layers. So he's going to take the 3 layers, put them together, and then he's going to look at it at a segmented level. So the example here is if we want to look at device equals C, computer. So all the traffic that came in from desktop. We're going to want to look at certain actions across those different layers that may be about the same thing. So clicks in your campaign layer and visits for your on-site layer, they're quite comparable, right? You want to be within a certain delta to make sure that you actually are capturing all those variables on site. Otherwise, paid search is going to be undercredited. The example of on-site and off-site would be an action on-site of like submitting an application, right? And the off-site would be how many accounts were open. These won't match. Sometimes there's fraud accounts or duped accounts or things like that, but it should fit in with a tolerable delta for your company. Next, you're going to slice the data into these like very thin cake slices. You're going to try the big cake slices, and you're going to see what differences you can learn from the different ways you're cutting your cake. So the example here, again, we're looking at that device equals desktop. We're going to take all of that data across those various layers, and we're going to get our full funnel measurement. So we're going to get these KPIs, and we're going to be able to say, okay, computer clicks tends to drive a balance over impression of $100. Then you're going to be able to compare that with other segments and get some learnings there on what's a little bit more valuable to you. Last step, really important piece, dig into the competition. This is really where you add flavor to your cake and get a little bit deeper rather than saying, oh, it's sweet. You know, you want to say like, oh, it's honey from North Africa or something. You want to get a little specific with it. So the example here, these screenshots here from our friends at Adthena, we can actually segment out these views the same way we segment out our campaigns. So again, if I'm going to filter by device equals computer, I can add the keyword online savings. However else I've filtered my own data, I try to filter that same view in Adthena so that I can see what's happening in the market. How am I stacking up against my competition? And what are the trends that are happening? So an example here, the first one, we see market trends. So this is impression share for computer paid search online savings keywords. We see that there's a competitor slowly growing, right? So if we suddenly see that our performance is going down a little bit, this provides that valuable insight as to why, what could be contributing to that, right? Then we want to dig deeper. We want to see how are these advertisers speaking to their audience within this same segment. And we can see, oh, that guy who is claiming market share, he inserted a new ad in 7 days ago, the same time that tick started to go up, and he is having a promotion. He didn't have that before. So again, these types of insights are really important to take back to the business, not only to explain why your data trends are going the way that they are, but also to help maintain your competitiveness, especially for things like branded terms. So here, very complex slide. I'll try to break it down. So how do we slice the data cake for insights? So obviously you have your chef, he's the one sitting there breaking out these campaigns, deciding the targeting, the messaging, et cetera, so that he can feed those variables to the on-site experience so that we can tie it to full funnel. So I'll just go through one example here. The first campaign, he's targeting like non-family, right, single people, and he has an A/B test set up. So the first one is your evergreen. It's open an account in the ad, and it's open an account on the site. What he's testing is get started in an ad and get started on the site. So already, because of that experience and the tracking template that he's implemented, he has the breakout of that data in the campaign layer, and he has the breakout of that data in the on-site layer. Once those unique IDs come in, that link will be able to do it at that same level as well so that you can see how each one is performing. Main takeaway from this is that you should not be measuring to a single KPI. A lot of people out there are like, oh, that ad wins, the click-through rate's higher. Yeah, if my ad said click here and win $1 million, the click-through rate might be great as well, but a lot of people might not actually convert. So then some people might say, okay, conversion rate is where you want to go. My idea is you want to have a multitude of KPIs, and you always want to start with the most full funnel measurement you can as being your primary KPI. But also, the two parts of the formula should be from your top layer and your end layer. So what I mean by that is the example here, balance per dollar or balance per impression. You're going to take an off-site metric and put it to the campaign metric. This is how you really get a better sense of what is the incrementality of one ad or experience over another. So the example we see here with those various metrics is that variant A may not be performing as well as B, right? Open is having a slightly lower click-through rate, lower conversion rate, but it's driving a lot more balance per our investment. So then it's like, okay, why? So then we go down and we start to list our insights, and we start to get a little curious about it. Could the word open maybe be a little too committal, right, compared to get started? So what do we want to do with this? Do we want to test a hybrid ad that sort of uses start to boost our traffic, but maintain open to keep that quality there? Do we maybe want to use get started and test adding an additional qualifier, minimum deposit? You don't know, right? So the overall goal is to tweak for improvements across all KPIs, but ultimately looking at the most full funnel version that you can. So again, some of the examples here that you can see, some KPIs win from one variant to the other. It's not always clear which one is a winner, so you really have to dig under the hood every which way and always look as well, what are your competitors doing, because that will influence your ad performance quite a bit. So here's where we dig into the competition. This is just one small feature in Adthena, but I thought it provides a good example of how curious you can be. What we're looking at with these pie charts are share of clicks and share of impressions by device. Again, not looking at just one metric, looking at two and seeing how they interact together. So if an advertiser, as we see with this green cupcake here, if he has a really high click share, but a lower ratio of cost share, that tells me he has really good cost efficiencies. He probably has an ad that's performing very well with click-through rate, which helps lower his CPC, but drive up his traffic. Now, whether or not that's delivering business goals, we don't necessarily know, but the fact that he's up there at the top with the majority probably means he's doing something right. So what you're going to want to do is dig into that a little bit deeper and look at that ad copy on desktop and say, what is he doing that we're not doing? Does he have the keyword, right? Because you can filter this again by device and keyword. Does he have the keyword in headline 1 or headline 2? Is it also in description 1 or is it only in description 2? Is the call to action at the end of description 1 or is it in description 2? We know description 2 doesn't always show, so we can get some learnings from how other people are doing their creative, and this should influence what we're testing. Serving the data cake. So this is where we want to pick that best slice, which are the best tasting slices, and bring them to the team so that they can enjoy it and use it to move forward. So measuring patterns in performance at these various segment levels, I gave you a couple examples. You want to get that all together. You want to turn it into insightful insights by looking at the competitive market to see if you can answer some questions as to why things are happening the way they are. So again, I'll take this one example where we see, okay, brand campaigns continue to drive efficient click-through rates and efficient conversion rates. That's flat week over week. But guess what? Our balances per dollar has gone down 15%. That's a problem. Now, there can be a lot of reasons for this. Maybe your site went down, you don't know. But if you dig, you hopefully will find out some of the reasons, right? So one of the reasons that we could find is that we saw a competitor, X and Y, start to gain market share for our branded terms at the same time that our deposits per marketing dollar started to go down. So then I start to question, why didn't that affect my click-through rate or my conversion rate? So then I look at their ad creative, and they're promoting a cash bonus for a minimum deposit amount. So what that tells me is maybe they're not getting enough clicks, right, in my branded auctions to drive down my click-through rate, but they're definitely attracting those people with the higher balances, and that will absolutely affect the measurement of my balance per marketing dollar. So I'm going to leave you with a couple data baking tips. So limit the amount of cooks in your kitchen. I think it's really important to have owners of data and owners of the various steps of the process, because otherwise, if you have too many cooks, one person thinks the other guy put in baking soda and then your cake won't bake. Know how your equipment works. Cannot stress this one enough because you want it to work for you. Google is not going to look out for you. Other machines won't as well. But the beautiful thing about tools is if you pick one that's customizable, where you can become a true expert of how to tweak the nuts and bolts to make it work the way you want to, the return is endless. And that's something that we actually feel very strongly about with Adthena, is that we can build out these custom keyword groups that match our digital marketing campaigns, and we can dig under it and validate it to our own campaign data, so we trust it, right? There's not a lot of competitive insights tools out there where if I were to say, okay, show me what you think I'm doing in paid search, they've never been correct. So I was kind of blown away when I saw that what Adthena thought I was doing was pretty on spot. I was like, okay, I want to work with you. Taste, test, and be curious. So again, continuously taste your data as it's coming in. See if that can shift your strategy, influence your strategy, or provide insights to the rest of the team. Don't undercook your data. This is especially important for testing. So you really want to reach sample size so that you can do an analysis that reaches significance on that full funnel KPI. Don't act too quickly. Things can change. Be a micro data manager, so don't look too high level. Get as granular as you can. You're not always going to find something, but when you do, it's gold. Granularize your analysis. So again, you're going to be looking at these various segments. Cut it both ways and look at it with different date ranges and see what you can learn from that. Share your learnings. So share it with your team. Share it across the business as well. It can really help influence other channel owners, even your on-site team as well. And then test, measure, optimize, and repeat. So I'm going to end with a little quote here by Julia Child. She says, learn how to cook, try new recipes, learn from your mistakes, be fearless, and above all, have fun, because a party without a cake is just a meeting. So thank you, guys. So for us, what's important is how you tie it to your own data. So what they do share is the impressions, so the reach, also the days that it's been in market, which is also really important for you to identify when things happen with the data that goes up and down. You can see what creative may have contributed to that. So when I started speaking with Adthena over a year ago, I'm, like you, I've tested all the other tools and I know how machines work, so I knew which questions to ask. So I was asking, okay, how does the methodology work? And they explained that they basically search and crawl your AdWords account and your website to get this collection of keywords that they will continuously search throughout the day, scan the SERPs, and see what's going on. So they're really taking the pulse on this living organism, which it is, and they're interjecting and tracking those different metrics. So again, when I compared it to our data, it was spot on, and it still is. So it gives me a lot of confidence in their data integrity, which helps give me confidence in using it for my decisions and my strategy.